Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to Cartoon Crossroads Columbus 2021. My name is Jersey Drozd. I'm the interim executive director of CXC. And we're going to have another exciting discussion with more local cartoonists, really proving what a rich place Columbus is for people who make comics and cartoons. But first, we need to thank some people who make this festival possible. CXC is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, which means that in order to do all this really exciting stuff that we do, we need funding. And we rely on individual donors, we rely on grants, and we also rely on corporate sponsors. And I want to take this opportunity to thank some of our sponsors who are directly responsible for us having the resources to put on all this amazing stuff that we do here at CXC. And also our partners. The thing I've been saying in every other intro is that when I first came to CXC years ago, all the way down from Ann Arbor, but I moved here, I live in Columbus now, I chose Columbus over Ann Arbor, so don't be mad. I drove home with my wife and I was almost screaming into the windshield, it's like that whole darn town celebrates comics. That is unique. And so we need to thank the people who show up and support CXC by being venues, being partners in terms of developing programming, the Billy Ireland Cartoon Library and Museum, the Columbus College of Art and Design, the Columbus Metropolitan Library, the Wexner Center for the Arts, and the Columbus Museum of Art. And finally, Cartoon Crossroads Columbus acknowledges that the ancient ancestors of the Eastern Woodlands tribes, now referred to as the Adena and Hopewell cultures, inhabited the land we know as Ohio. Their descendants include the living nations of the Shawnee, Miami, Wyandot, Delaware, and Seneca Cayuga. We honor and respect the diverse indigenous peoples connected to this place where we gather. Now it's time for me to hand it over to Christian Hoffer, who is going to moderate a discussion with, again, people who live right here and are very exciting comics authors, Matthew, Erman, and Lisa Sterle. So hand it to Christian. Let's greet them as warmly as we can.
Okay. Well, hello. My name is Christian Hoffer. I'm the operations manager here at CXC. Do you guys have audio?
I think.
Yes, okay. I can hear you this time.
Okay,
yes.
Cool.
So I'm the operations manager here at CXC. I'm also a comics journalist, particularly covering mostly mainstream comics, which is fitting as today our final presentation here at the library is with Matt Erman and Lisa Sterle, two of the rising stars in the kind of direct market comics industry. Matt and Lisa, both debuted doing Long Lost. They've worked on a ton of other comics. And so we're going to kind of talk about their comic careers and stuff like that. Matt, Lisa, do you guys want to introduce yourselves, or do you want a better introduction? Or
We want a better introduction. You're fine. No, that was great. Thank you. I'm Matthew Erman. I'm a comic writer, and I've been writing comics since 2017.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
And I'm Lisa Sterle. I'm an artist and comics artist.
Among other things.
Yeah. And I have worked on graphic novels, direct-to-market comic books, a tarot deck, and lots of other stuff.
You're a professional illustrator. I think that's the term.
I'm an illustrator, sure.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing here, not only are the two of you both rising stars in the comics industry, you're also a married couple
We
who
are
have
in love.
collaborated together.
Yes.
So, I guess we should get the very obvious question out of the way first. How did you guys meet?
We met on MySpace.
That is
so
accurate.
that dates us very precisely. We were, I think, both teenagers, like 18, 19, so we've known each other for a long time.
Yeah.
We had a mutual friend, started talking on MySpace.
You were looking for anime recommendations.
I was looking for anime recommendations.
And I was like, now's my shot.
Actually, I don't think I was looking for anime recommendations. I think you just showed up in my private messages with recommendations.
That sounds about right for a 19-year-old
literally
Matt.
popped into her DMs.
Slide right in and was like,
let's talk about anime.
let's watch Satoshi Kon.
I moved you to Columbus.
Yes, accurate.
About a year after that, he moved in with me as my platonic roommate, and then about a year after that, we started dating, and
that was 10 years ago.
Yeah. So we've been together a while, and we didn't start comics until
deep into the relationship.
4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, okay, so you guys met because you had a mutual love of anime and some other things.
For sure.
So how does comics fit into all of this? Like, when did you two both decide, like, yeah, let's make a go of it as comics creators?
I think that
See, I feel like I still have a very clear insight into what our mindset was at the time that we
Let's hear it.
started to tried to make a comic book.
Yeah.
And that it was, to be honest, kind of our last-ditch effort to have careers as creative professionals.
I mean, that's it. Yeah, no, that's a good way to put it. It's like we both tried really hard to make it on our own.
Yeah, and I was doing graphic design at the time, which was not for me, but...
I was doing marketing and copywriting, which I was consistently fired from, so...
I don't think we... I think we had an idea
Yeah.
for a horror comic. We had probably spent the previous couple years consistently watching horror movies and either loving them or bitching about them constantly about everything that we would do differently and why that ending sucked. And
Yeah, and
we
that's
decided to finally, put our money where our mouth is and try to make something horror related for ourselves. Since we weren't seeing what we wanted to see.
Yeah.
And he was already a writer, and I was an artist.
air quotes around already a writer. I was trying to be.
And so we were in like Hocking Hills and in a creepy cabin in the woods, and we.
That was we came up with an idea, and then it took about a year and a half of
developing that idea.
Developing it, restating, like, hey, do you remember that idea we had? We should probably do something with that. And then it was like, I'd write something, and then she'd draw something. And then over the course of 2 years, we started to get enough material to put together a pitch, which is something I didn't know you needed to do for mainstream comics. And that was a learning curve. And it went real fast after that. I think we put together the pitch, and then within probably 3 or 4 months,
actually, we did 2 pitches.
Oh yeah, that's right.
We put together 1 pitch, didn't have any success.
Yeah, we sent it to like 40 people, and everyone was like, "Are you kidding?"
So then we went back to the drawing board and redid some artwork and redid some stuff, and then the second time around, we were successful in getting it picked up.
Yeah.
So, that's where Long Lost came from.
Was that the question?
You guys can keep talking. I'm just standing here. So, tell us a little bit about, Long Lost, it was published by, I believe, Scout Comics, correct?
Yes, Scout Comics.
All right, and so that's one of those, newish publishers that have, risen up in the last, 5-10 years.
Yeah.
And, tell us about the entire process of pitching that and, breaking into the industry, because, a lot of other married couples, they come into comics, but they
immediately divorced.
Yeah, well, that also.
That's not I don't know.
But you don't see too many married couples breaking into comics with the same comic. So tell us about all of that. So you pitched this. How did it come to fruition?
Yeah, so one of the first things we did. I really cannot stress this enough. We literally knew nothing going into let's make a comic pitch. And so the whole process was going to Laughing Ogre and seeing the publishers that were putting out books.
Oh yeah, that's right. We actually literally did market research.
Well, yeah, it was I don't know what even publishers would look at a book what we're trying to do.
We looked at all the indie publishers and tried to, find
just people that we felt could
our book and our idea could fit.
Yeah, we knew that we weren't going to get an Image book or a Dark Horse book right off the bat, and we pitched this to them before Scout, and silence, which is typically the thing. So when we eventually heard back from Scout after we pitched, we were really excited that someone was going to take a chance on our comic, and the crazy, in hindsight, it's unbelievable that they agreed to publish our comic, because there's just so many red flags in our pitches that when we put it out there, it's we wanted a 12-issue comic, and it was this sprawling thing, and it was just, now that I've done this for 3 years, that doesn't, the rarity of that happening is 1%.
Yeah, we got very lucky in that we asked for 12 issues.
Yeah.
And we got 12 issues.
Which is crazy.
Yeah. most, you know,
4 or 5.
miniseries
Yeah.
are like 4 to 6 issues.
Yeah.
So we were really blessed that we did get the opportunity to tell the story in the format and length that we wanted to. But yeah, a little bit more detailed about the pitching. Essentially what we sent to Scout that they decided to, you know, sign a contract with us for was a pitch book that just had the story summary, the character descriptions. I did character art for all of the main characters.
Yeah.
And then I believe at this point we had about 20 finished pages.
Yeah.
From just a random chapter.
I
in
think
the
I
book.
wrote
It wasn't even the beginning.
No, I think
it was
I
just
was
something
like-
that I wanted to draw, and I was like, we'll start here. And I ended up redrawing the entire thing when I finally got to that part in the story.
Yeah.
But I think that was one of the things that really helped, is having so much finished art, so they knew exactly what the book was going to look like going in. So,
Yeah, that was a huge, you know, benefit to the pitches.
And it's funny though, because the story summary
Didn't stick to it at all.
And actually, the art that is in the pitch, it doesn't look anything like the art.
No, it's like
the style. Well, it looks still. It's still my art, but like it did a different style when
Yeah,
it actually came to the book itself.
once you sign that contract, all bets are off. You can do basically whatever you want within the legal limits of the law.
Anyway, but yeah, so Scout saw that document that we sent them and agreed to pick it up for an insane 12 issues, even though we had never made a comic book.
No.
And
And the other thing, too, is we were like, there's no way we're going to get a monthly comic. We've never done comics. And we originally
we
pitched
learned
it.
a lot about
Yeah.
the publishing.
We originally pitched it as a graphic novel because that's
Yeah.
what we were most familiar with.
Yep.
And that's what we thought this kind of story would be best as. And Scott was like, nah, we'll do it monthly. And we're like, okay. And so like it was like we signed the contract and then you went part-time at the day job to start drawing.
Yeah, I did
the
about
comic.
a little over half of the entire series while I was working a full-time job.
Which is disgusting.
Full-time, and then I went down to part-time. But yeah, and I did all the colors on it and all the lettering, even though I knew nothing about comics lettering, and I do, part of me wishes I would go back and hire a professional letterer to redo it, but you know, it worked. And I actually think that the fact that we, I don't know, knew so little about, it's not that we didn't know anything about comics, but you know, we didn't.
The process of making them was very new to us, and we were very. It was like test.
We definitely had read a lot more graphic novels at that point than monthly comics, and I think honestly that kind of helped us in a way as far as finding an audience that kind of appreciated a little bit of an outsider, like
Glacially paced.
Yeah, it is not
monthly
paced.
series.
It is not paced at all. Like I would say a
No.
typical monthly comic.
Nothing happens for the first 4 issues, and so if you're buying this for like every
You're
4
looking
months,
for something very specific
yeah.
that we delivered, I suppose. But yeah.
It worked out somehow, amazingly.
So now I'm going to jump ahead a little bit.
Please.
That's
So
fine.
the first comic that you worked on was Long Lost,
Yeah.
and you've worked on it together. And now this year, you know, a few years later into your career, you're working on another comic together.
Yes.
How has the collaborative process between the two of you changed over that time period? Because, you know, it seems like for Long Lost, you guys were both, you know, for lack of a better term, like kind of like stumbling around in the darkness. And now
Yeah.
you're like seasoned pros. So like, you know, like you guys like yell at each other now a lot more?
Has the process changed at
Oh,
all?
Yes, no, the process has changed so much. So, for Long Lost, Matt's scripts did not have
Oh
panel
man, they were so
breakdowns.
bad.
So, like most of the time, and
I'm just flipping
did,
through.
Did you include a page of your scripts?
No.
In the slideshow?
Thankfully, I did not. I didn't think people needed to see
Okay, well,
a
like,
train wreck.
Generally, comic artists work off scripts that have page breakdowns and then panel breakdowns. Panel
Yeah.
1, character says this action happens, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
I mean, not all writers work that way, but I would say.
I mean, it's for an industry that literally has no standard. Like that's the one consistent thing
Yeah.
is like make sure you tell the artist how many panels you want on this page.
But so since Matt was not an artist and you were less, familiar with what could be accomplished per page and per panel, I essentially told you, just don't worry about paneling it out, and I'll panel it out myself.
Which is so crazy that you did that. I mean, that's I honestly like grounds for leaving me.
But yeah, I remember back with Long Lost, and luckily I really like working with you. Otherwise, this might not have been so successful. But we were like, I remember issue 5, I think.
Oh, God.
I think it was like 3 weeks of us talking back and forth about how to fix all of the issues with the script because it wasn't working.
Oh, yeah.
And it was very collaborative at that stage. Like, we would just, be up late nights talking, okay, what if this happened? What if this happened? And I'm never like going into your Word document and writing anything, but we do brainstorm a lot.
Yeah.
And I really love that because I like to feel part of the creative process with the story just as much as the art. So it worked out there.
Yeah.
But what's interesting with Witchblood is that you've written so many more comic scripts since then, and you seem you're so much more sure of like,
I'm not
your
a baby.
vision
I'm
and
not a
what
baby
you're trying
anymore.
to do, that I was still there as a collaborative partner, but you did a lot of the script. You did all the.
I did my job this time.
The scripts have been great, and they're all paneled out.
That's great to hear. I'm very excited about that. But yeah, and other than that, like, generally when I work with an artist, whether it's Lisa or whoever, I really try to incorporate them into the creative process because I think comics, the thing that makes it most unique as a form of writing and as a form of creating art is that it is multiple people are contributing to this, and creatively, and there's a trade aspect to it, there's skills to it, but Lisa's the director of Long Lost, I think, that's how I've put it. Like, you take what I've written and you put you make it visual. And I think without the collaborative process, you lose some of the passion that would naturally occur when you're pouring something into art. And so I really love working with artists. I really love making them a part of the beginning, the scripting process, letting them read my scripts before an editor gets to them. I think that's really important. That's one of the things I love doing is just giving them the first look and saying, like, do you want to draw this?
Yeah, there's so many times with Witchblood too where you've come to me and been like, okay, there needs to be some kind of action sequence here. What kind of magic do you want to draw for this witch to have? And I'm like, hell yeah. So it's really exciting that I always feel like I'm a co-creator.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think and I think that's the biggest thing when it comes to creating comics is that unfortunately the co-creator, kind of boils down to the writer-artist thing. But even the colorists, letterer,
sure.
like the whole aspect of it, like.
I mean, Gab Contreras, our colorist on Witchblood, has really created an entirely unique visual style that's, I think, really recognizable, and she's done an amazing job. And the comic would not look the same without her.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that kind of brings me up to another thing that I was going to get to later, but we can talk about this now.
Sure.
One of the things that really strikes me about your art, Lisa, and something that I notice whenever I go into the comic shop, I can instantly pick out when you do a cover. And part of that is this color scheme. Now, obviously, you're not the colorist on it, but I feel like you, in particular, your art has this super distinctive style of of coloring, and it's just really evocative. And so how does that process work?
Well, yeah, it's funny because I will admit I did already have a vision for the colors in mind for Witchblood before we found the colorist, and so working with Gab, we picked her and wanted to work with her because of other work she'd done that was very bright and saturated and intense. And that was the look that I wanted for this story for sure. I'm a huge fan of bright colors, obviously. And I also really love keeping things like both bright and also simple, if that makes any sense. So like limited color palettes too. Like sometimes there are scenes in Witchblood that are just pink and green, and those are the only colors on the page. And I just love things that are visually eye-catching and exciting and make you feel part of the action, I suppose. So
Absolutely. You like all those things.
Yeah.
I agree.
Well,
yeah.
You know, it's kind of funny because we were talking outside before this panel about yellow because you guys are coordinating, and then I got to this to this slide. I'm like, oh, there's that yellow again.
Yes, I love that yellow, that golden yellow. It's funny, like with the tarot deck, when it comes to color, like I had to create an entire palette that would work across 72 different cards, and the kinds of things you come up with when you're just trying to make everything look cohesive. Like I had one yellow that I used throughout the entire thing, that golden yellow. I nixed like a really standard blue. There's no like really just generic blue. It's usually like a mint green, just to tie everything together. And yeah, I love color, so yeah.
I mean, it really shows. So, you know, let's talk about some like the themes of your guys' work. Unless, Matt, do you have something that you want to? No? Okay.
No.
You were just looking very longingly at your wife. So I was like,
Hey, I mean,
okay, anyways, let's talk about some of the themes of your work, because you guys do a lot of horror comics, like, but also they're very, like, I don't want to say wholesome horror comics. I'm a little bit biased because I just read Squad, which Lisa illustrated and comes out next Tuesday, but you can buy copies early after this is over. Hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But, you know, there does seem to be, like, it's not just, like, gruesome gore for the sake of gore. Like, why?
no, that's a good question. I think that, I mean, I don't know if there's meaning behind anything that I do. I think that there clearly is, but to whoever, you know, wants to assign meaning to it. I think that what I try to do when I'm writing my scripts and I'm telling these stories, and I think the biggest thing is having an audience that wants to, I mean, I don't even know what I'm trying to say here. I don't know. It's an aesthetic thing, I think. I think when you get too intense or when you lean too hard into one aesthetic thing, whether that's like hyper gore or like violence or like drawing, like, I don't know, like like Junji Ito. Junji Ito does a thing that's really particular, and it's like not, some of it's super gruesome, but it's not only that. And I think that writing a good story and creating something that people want to read has to have more elements to it than this is a gruesome comic, or it's, you know, something terrible happened, or like, you know, I don't want to put anyone down, but it's just like there are so many facets to what make a story interesting or good, and to lean on any one thing in particular, I think, takes away from the, you know, expansiveness that you can do generally when you're writing something.
Well, I think that, you know, yes, we do a lot of horror-tinged things, and it is a genre that I love, both to draw and to enjoy. But one of the things that I like with your writing in particular within horror is that, you know, it's not just about, like, you know, the scary setting or the monsters or, you know, the supernatural element, but at the heart it's still just about characters. And I've always loved the characters that you create. I think they're very vivid. They seem like they have real feelings and dreams and fears and motives. And so beneath, you know, the veneer of a horror, you still have a story about like Long Lost and also Witchblood are both about family in a lot of ways, whether it's found or not.
You're so much smarter than me. I rambled for like 5 minutes and we're like, I don't know. And you're like, nailed it.
No, you write a lot about family. You write a lot about like finding your place in the world and purpose and.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I think the reason why we're drawn to horror as a way to tell these stories is, aesthetic, but also just an easier way to bring, because horror is a popular genre, and we love it, and we love people that love it, so we're already speaking to our audience on a level that, like, we both share the love of a thing, and that's horror. So now we have an easier way to draw you in to talk about the other things that we're talking about within this story, if that makes sense.
That makes way more sense than the thing that I said, so thank you.
But yeah, so.
So as I'm flipping through some of these images of Witchblood
Oh, yeah.
and stuff like that, but you guys have done, between the two of you, you've worked for just about every major comics publisher with the exception of Marvel and Image. So I'm going to put you on the spot since we're recording this for posterity.
Please.
But what were some of your best experiences with different publishers? And conversely, what were some of your worst experiences with different publishers?
I'll go first so that you can. I'll go first so that you can come swoop in and.
You can always speak vaguely. We don't need to name names.
Yeah, obviously we won't name
Name
names
names.
because I still want to have a career after this. But some of the best. So working in this industry, you're going to be working with primarily 1 or 2 people for any given book. For good luck, I have 3 or 4 editors, which is like an abundance of editors. It's like there should be a word for a group of them, like a gaggle or something. But normally it's just like 1 or 2 people, and getting to work with those individuals, those single people, that's the most rewarding thing for me, because you get to craft something that is aesthetically yours, that's getting put through this kind of, I don't know, it's an alien filter. It's like, working with Vault and Adrian, Witchblood would be different if it was another editor working on it. And I think that's, again, part of the joy of collaboration. And I think, I don't know, for some writers that might be frustrating. My vision is not being respected by this, whatever it is. And I'm not like that. I'm not precious about the things that I write. I think that's really important getting into an industry like this, because, like I said, Boom, they gave me 4 editors, and they all had opinions on what the story should look like for Good Luck. And while that was very difficult to parse through a lot of that, I think it made the story better at the end of the day. And I think that's what editors try to do. And honestly, that's my favorite part of working with publishers, is just getting to know the editors and like write something for them and for the artist. That's really what I do. I write for like 2 people, the editor and the artist. And if I can make them happy, then I'm good.
All in all, you've had pretty good experiences with the publishers.
I really have,
you've
yeah.
worked with. Yeah, I'm going to say pretty much the same, not the same thing, but like I also have had very positive experiences with nearly all of the publishers that I've worked with.
Yeah.
I mean, and generally, like, it's interesting because I think the only real main complaint I have sometimes about, working in comics is there are some publishers that, like, we've talked a lot about collaboration and how much we love feeling part of a team.
Yeah.
I'm not particularly a fan of the publishers that have a editor communicating between the artist and writer at all times. I love having a direct line to my writer.
Siloing the creative process. I don't want to say a lot, but certain places do that siloing where they'll be.
I get why. It's because there's probably less drama that way, and if there are issues throughout the team.
I always find a way to talk to them. I'll find them on Twitter.
Yeah. I've done the same thing. I've just been like, hey, I'm going to just hit you up on Twitter because we don't, It's just, I like to think I'm easy to work with, so I really like being able to talk directly to my writers and not having to feel like I have to go through an editor that will then relay my message onto them, especially when you're just like so much easier to get things done where you can just like talk one-on-one and be like, hey, what do you think of this, page or this layout? Or like I'm definitely the kind of person that wants my writer to feel included in the art as much as I would like that vice versa. And so I'm always sending along like screenshots of pages in progress and getting feedback on like, oh, is this pose working? What do you think? I love getting second opinions, so.
Yeah. Your horse is on the screen, the one that you murdered.
Oh, no, you put that page in?
Yeah, I thought it was a really good page to put in here.
Oh, wow, yeah.
It didn't suffer.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah. Other than that, like, sometimes there's communication issues, but with publishers and whatnot. But all in all, it's been a very positive experience with everybody that I've
Sometimes
worked
working for like intellectual property, like Care Bears and like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Some of that can get kind of like not hairy or weird. It's just a little weird where you're getting notes from an editor who wants you to write a good story, but you're also getting notes from like
the intellectual property holder.
the holder of
Yeah.
the Care Bears intellectual property.
I've
Like,
dealt with that too.
Grumpy Bear would
Yeah.
never say this. I'm like, are you what? So like some of that like can be frustrating.
And you can't really like argue it because, yeah.
I don't own Grumpy Bear.
No, no.
They do.
Yeah.
That was an actual note. I say this frequently. They told me Grumpy Bear was too grumpy. I really doubled down on his grumpiness, and apparently that wasn't cool. The Care Bears people were not thrilled about how grumpy I made that bear. But on a side note, and we'll get to that page, they let me put a bathroom in the Care Bears comic, which is like there's no rhyme or reason as to why people.
I mean, you were the one who made it canonical for the Care Bear shit.
Yeah, no, that was me. That's all over the Care Bears wiki.
You know,
Claim
we
fame.
now know that Care Bears do poop in the woods.
No, they have a little. They have an actual bathroom in their like RV thing.
It was a metaphor.
Oh, okay. I was
He's
like,
the writer,
you need
guys.
to. I'm correcting you. I wrote this.
It's like, listen, it's on the wiki. No, I totally lost my train of thought now.
Good and bad in publishing.
Yeah, good and bad in publishing. Well, let's talk a little bit more about kind of like, I'm going to flip forward a little bit because I've the Care Bear stuff. So you guys have done like a pretty wide variety. You know, Lisa, you've actually worked for DC. Matt, you've done Power Rangers and
Yeah. Dark Crystal.
Dark Crystal. I mean, now here's kind of the interesting thing because I've spoken with you about this, Matt, a couple of times. Is like that's not the end goal to do like work for hire stuff.
No, absolutely not. I think that it's glamorous. I don't even know if that's the right word to use, but it's like, I don't know. You go to your parents and you're like, I'm writing Dark Crystal, and they're like, ooh. And it's just like, it's one of those things.
Sometimes they're impressed, sometimes they're not.
Sometimes
Depends
they're
on how familiar they are with the thing.
My mom was super stoked about me writing Power Rangers. And it's like writing intellectual property, it's fun, but it can't be the only thing that you would strive to do
Well,
because you never end up owning anything that you put onto the paper. And I
Yeah.
think that's really important. Like,
it does kind of sometimes feel like you're giving away all your best ideas sometimes.
Absolutely.
When you do too much of, yeah. I mean, that being said, like it was really fun working with DC and I would do it again in a second. I don't know if superhero comics are my bread and butter in that I don't know if that's where my art really fits.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I would love to do like a little graphic novel or something, like a Harley Quinn graphic novel. I mean, okay. Anyway, but yeah, it's definitely fun. But I do think we value kind of telling our own stories and making our own characters and universes more than anything else, and just
Yeah.
to be able to continue doing that.
it's like you did a Glow comic that was really cool.
That was fun.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan. I was a big fan of the show before. And
It's fun. It's like if you're thinking about it as like food, which you shouldn't, but I'm going to use this as a metaphor. It's like getting to do intellectual property stuff, writing for Dark Crystal, writing for Power Rangers. It's like it's a little cherry. It's like really nice to have. It's really nice to like, but it doesn't affect the dessert or whatever.
Well, I will also say this though.
Does that track? No, it doesn't. It's fine.
That, I mean, working for, DC or Marvel or doing an intellectual property like that, it can be really good for your reach and getting new fans and getting your work in front of new people that might not have picked up your indie series, but now they know your name and they know your work because they, saw you do this Power Rangers comic and they were a huge fan. And that's really cool. Being able to grow your audience that way is super
absolutely.
great. Yeah.
That's a big plus of IP.
One of the drawbacks I found to the people who really go in hard on work for hire is they become known for doing the thing. They have one shtick that they do. You guys are both rising professionals, and the allure of making comics because you make a lot of money doing the IP stuff. How do you kind of balance that out? Remaining creative, doing the work for hire stuff, doing your own comics. How there's a balance there, and how do you maintain that?
For me, it's kind of about, I have been really fortunate and in my career in that I don't have to say yes to everything that comes into my inbox. So for me, it's just, when I get the IP project, that's something that I'm a really huge nerd about and I'm already a huge fan of. When I can feel there'll be passion here and it's not just going to be for a paycheck, those are the times that I say yes, and they're really fun to do.
Yeah. No, I think that, I think it's pretty similar to my situation as well.
Very passionate about Care Bears.
Yeah, I was chomping at the bit to write that story. No, it's just I was asked to write pitch a Pirates of the Caribbean story, and I was like, no. And there's some things that just I can't imagine me doing this. And the IP stuff that comes along that's weird, Care Bears was weird. Especially because we had just come off Long Lost.
Yeah, I think that was the only thing.
It's I had written a black and white horror comic, and they're like, "You want to write Care Bears?" And I was like, "That's unbelievable that you're asking me to do this." So I said yes. and then Power Rangers was, you get an email subject line that's Power Rangers with a question mark, and you just, where can this lead to? Same with Dark Crystal. I had never actually seen the movie Dark Crystal when I was offered to write for the series, and I had no idea what it was, and I told them, I don't know anything about this. And they're just go see it. And I did, and then I was like, okay.
Oh, that's great.
So what do you guys got coming up next?
Well, the soonest thing, I have my graphic novel, Squad, written by Maggie Takuda Hall, that comes out Tuesday, October 5th. That is Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. October 5th, Squad. It is a horror story about teen girls that turn into werewolves and eat creeps for dinner.
It's really good. I cannot speak highly enough about it.
I had a lot of fun working on it. It was, and I'm excited that it's out, or about to be. We're going to have a few copies afterward.
Yeah.
Witchblood number 7?
Witchblood number 7 hits
Comes
comic
out.
shops on October 13th.
Yes, and then we have 3 more issues after that.
Yes.
And sometime next year will be a collected edition of the entire run.
Yeah. The last issue of Good Luck comes out this month too. I don't know what day. It's one of the Wednesdays.
Oh, don't look at me. I don't know your
Yeah,
schedule.
no, I know. It's I'm going to say it's not the 13th, so the 20th.
Tell people what Good Luck is. We
Oh.
haven't talked about it yet.
Good Luck is the series that I wrote for Boom. It's the first original series that I wrote for Boom. I had done Dark Crystal and Power Rangers for them prior, and they liked my stuff, so I was able to start pitching them original ideas, and 40 ideas in, I finally nailed something that they were excited about, and Good Luck ended up being this weird story about these kids who are the unluckiest kids on the planet and have to save the world. And it's, there it is. That one just came out. The last one, number 5, comes out some Wednesday this month. But after that, I have a graphic novel coming out in March through Vault called Bonding, about people who have slugs on the front of their chests and they fall in love. It's a real
Very
weird
normal,
one.
very normal.
I'm really excited about that one to come out. The artist is Emily Pearson, and she's unbelievable. She's so talented. And then I just like over the past 3 weeks, I've signed 2 contracts for new
Got
series
lots coming out next year.
next year. So it never ends.
So we've got a few minutes left. We could, I figured I'd open up to questions. So any questions from the audience now?
Excellent. Scanning the room.
No?
Not
I mean, I have some more questions I can ask you. Like,
Please.
Well, I mean, since the audience doesn't want to ask these burning questions, I will.
Oh, we have one
Oh, there we
question.
go.
Oh.
Thank you.
Mostly for Lisa, but how long do you take to ink a page/an issue?
I used to be a lot faster. I used to be able to, I think for long lost I could ink 2 pages a day, but it was also a more simple style, so I'm much slower now. I try to aim for about a page a day. So yeah, probably about anywhere between 4 to 7 hours, depending on how difficult the page is, and how many panels it's got, how many horses it's got, or cars. I hate drawing cars.
Yeah. There's a referendum on putting cars in comics
Well,
now.
I actually figured out a trick though, and now I just buy little tiny toy models of cars
Oh yeah.
that I draw, and then I take pictures, and then I can just plop them in, and it's much easier. Anyway, so yeah, about a day to ink. My current schedule for Witchblood, I have about a month and a half to do an entire issue from start to finish. And I try and give myself weekends and take days off.
Be kind to
and-
yourself.
Yes.
That's really important. This
Yes.
industry will not be kind to you, so you got to do it for yourself.
But yeah, I think about a month and a half is kind of standard. I think originally the schedule was about a month per issue,
Yeah.
or 5 weeks. But yeah, so I do my thumbnails first. That takes about, I don't know, a week. And then pencils, which vary in complexity depending on how I'm feeling. Sometimes I just do a very rough sketch and jump straight into inks, which is never a good idea, but I do it anyway. But yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
As someone who doesn't really touch coloring very much, what is a good exercise to do to get more well-versed in that? You know, do you, the best thing I can think of is like create a piece specifically for coloring, but then the initial thinking and sketching and like brainstorming saps a lot of my energy out. So, what would you suggest? Is there a good
I mean, do you work digitally or traditionally?
more digitally, but recently I'm trying to get back.
Yeah. Color exercises. I'm trying to think. I mean, I've always found, or one of the things that I've found when I don't quite know what to do for the color of a piece is try and make some limitations. So maybe I just forbid orange and yellow, and I use all the colors but those, and so I limit my palettes. That can make help you discover some interesting combinations, or pick one color that's going to be like the accent color, or like the no, that's not the word I'm looking for, but the focal color. I have one that I always go to, which is like this very bright red that whenever I don't know what to do, I just slap that color everywhere, and a color scheme, will happen around it. But I mean, other than just like messing around with, I do a ton of messing around with Photoshop overlays and filters, and but I think the thing that I've started doing more than anything else that I think has helped speed the process of, I'll do like a color sketch. So I'll do like my pencils and inks, and then I will do a really rough color, so I won't worry about like flatting anything or like rendering, or I'll just like sketch the entire piece with really rough, like almost like a marker kind of color thing, and then I'll go in and I'll make adjustments and tweak it endlessly until I find something that I like before I kind of move on to the final rendering stage. And I think that can kind of help if you figure out, you know, the basis first before you really get too deep into it. So yeah.
Good. Jersey?
Do you have any other cheats that you like? Going back to your like taking pictures of little cars. Any other things that you can share that help you get faster or more clever?
Yeah, it's the cars. That was also very helpful for motorcycles too, because there's a lot of motorcycles in Witchblood, and so I have both the actual models of the real
Characters,
motorcycles that are in it. What else have I done? I mean, you know, I take lots of reference photos, obviously, of me and him. More tricks. It generally helps to just have a big visual library of photos that you've taken. I remember for Long Lost, there's a lot of scenes that take place in the woods. And so for some of those pages that have really complex forest backgrounds, I literally took some photos out at some parks that we went to and heavily filtered them and dropped them in the background and inked other trees on top, and you can't even really tell. I actually picked that trick up from manga, from the I Am a Hero manga.
He does do that.
So yeah, even just like taking photos and placing them in backgrounds and inking over them, that's helpful. I have a lot of digital posing apps that have like little digital mannequins that I can try out really extreme perspectives, because it's really hard to get those kinds of reference photos sometimes.
You did that for the squad. You had you set up little scenes.
I set up because I had 4 characters and I wanted a really low angle, and I didn't have 4 friends immediately on hand to take reference photos of. So I'm trying to remember the name of the app off the top of my head, but if you just search
Blender?
No, it's not Blender, but it's like a basic version of it.
Seeing one of the things that's really helped, not helped, I don't want to speak for you, not helped, but seeing other people's layouts and thumbs.
Oh yeah.
Because it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to describe your tricks and your little things you do. And when I showed you, I wasn't supposed to, but when I showed you the good luck stuff, you immediately picked up on some of Stefano's tricks that he does in his layouts that just literally.
He'll take photos and slice them up to make those weird explosions. I'm like, oh, that's so crazy. I never thought to do that.
He'll take stock photos and just cut them up and manipulate them in a way they're no longer what they were originally, and he'll place those in and draw the panel around it just as a scene setting thing.
But yeah, I can't think of any more little tricks off the top of my head, but those are a few. Yeah.
Okay, well, it's almost 5 o'clock, so I'll let you guys get set up outside and sign some comics and sell some comics.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for attending this.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.